Good morning. It's Tuesday, May 24th, and today I want to talk about an incident that took place in Brooklyn. A man died at the end of the Brooklyn Half Marathon. He had a heart attack, but something else must have happened in that race because 15 other people were injured. And so I don't understand exactly why they don't know exactly what happened at the end of that race. But I can tell you from my experience as being a marathon runner for over 20 years, until my back went out. And I loved running. I loved getting up in the morning at 6:30 and putting my gear on and going out for a 5-mile run. And that's what I did for over 20 years. 5 times a week, 6 times a week. In fact, there was one time when I decided I was going to try to run 5 miles every day, at least 5 miles every day for a year. I never made it. I did 56 consecutive days, and that was the end of it. But I was involved in many races around the country and around the country. I never ran. Well, even overseas, I did run a marathon in Hawaii, and I did run 3 marathons in Bermuda, so I won't say that I was completely in the United States for my entire running career. But this event, this evil event that happened in Brooklyn, was similar to something that happened to me in Sunken Meadow Park. Sunken Meadow Park was a great training ground. There were many of us who belonged at that time to the Dix Hills Running Club, who would meet on the weekends down at Sunken Meadow Park at 7 a.m. in the morning. And this one morning, I was running with a group of 5 or 6 other Dix Hillers, and one of the gentlemen there I knew very well, and I had run with him many, many times. And we would start the race in the parking lot and run along the boardwalk up toward the golf course in Sunken Meadow Park. And then we would turn around and come back and run back across the boardwalk. And then those of us who felt like it would continue up into the hills and run the cross-country track that was used for a lot of the state meets on Long Island, a great cross-country track. And I left this group. And when I left this not young man, he was younger than me, but he wasn't what I would consider a young man. And he left, and he said he wasn't feeling too good, and he was going to hang out on the boardwalk and take it easy, and then he was going to go home. And so I went up into the hills, and I ran the rest of my training run, so to speak. And when I came back to the boardwalk, there was a crowd of people, and my friend was lying on the ground in agony, and he died. He had a heart attack on the boardwalk. And it was terrible. Terrible. They couldn't get help to him fast enough. It was Sunday morning. And you're out in Sunken Meadow, and there's no real phones around, and everybody in those days, and I'm going back, 30 years ago maybe, and people didn't carry around mobile phones in those days. It was not the usual thing to everybody have a mobile phone on them. So anyhow, he passed away, and he was 59 years old or something like that. And it was a terrible experience, and luckily for me, I wasn't in the vicinity when it actually happened, because I had gone up into the hills. So this is not unusual, but I'll tell you, when you're training, when you're running a race, serious races, and marathons are serious races, you have to train. If you don't train, you're not going to finish the race. Now, when I ran my first marathon, I was not properly trained for that marathon. And so at the 22-mile mark, I had to quit. And when I look back on it, I say, I know I could have finished that race, but I didn't want to go through the agony of running the last 4 miles. And so I did quit, and I was really afraid that the next morning I was going to be in deep shit. But I wasn't. I felt fine the next morning, and then I thought the whole thing over, and I said, why did I stop running? I would have made it. I would have been okay. But that I learned a lesson. That was the lesson I learned, that if you train properly, you can run any race. So running a marathon, while it seems to many people to be a very, very difficult thing, it's not if you train properly. If you do the training, then you will be able to run. My training regimen was a 12-week cycle, and at the end of the 12 weeks I was running 80 miles a week, and then I would ease off for 2 or 3 weeks, and then I would be going to the race. And I would set it up so that I could do 2 races a year. I would run something around the time of the New York Marathon or the New York Marathon itself. Sometimes I ran the Jersey Shore Marathon because that was around the same period as the New York Marathon. And then my second marathon would be someplace else, usually in Bermuda. We would go to Bermuda in January over Martin Luther King weekend, and I would run the Bermuda Marathon. And that was a runner's weekend. They would have a 10K and a half marathon and a marathon, and you could run all 3 days in 3 different races, and that was a great time. And we enjoyed Bermuda, and there was a lot of people, 15 or 20 of us who came from Long Island and went down to run those races. So running was a big part of my life for over 20 years, till my back went out. And I enjoyed every minute of it. The exercise was great. I was in good shape. My clothes fit well, I didn't have any other problems that I had to deal with. And I tell you something, when you run in the morning, it was very relaxing, and then you're ready to go to work. That's a booster. Get you ready for the day. So I am a firm believer in running. I loved running, and if my back didn't go out, I might still be running. So in any event, this event that happened in Brooklyn is a terrible event, and I don't know how it happened. And I did have a similar experience on the New York City Marathon. When I was crossing the Queensboro Bridge, I tripped and bumped into another runner. But luckily, neither one of us fell down, because if we had fallen down with the crowds that were behind us, who knows what would have happened. And that was a tricky thing, because Queensboro Bridge has these little iron spikes on the road surface there, and if we had gone down, that would have been a disaster. But we avoided that disaster. So all in all, those of you who have never tried running should go out there and give it a shot. It was a very relaxing time. And for those of you who still run, keep running. So that's my story for today, a sad story, but I'm waiting to see what the results of this accident were in Brooklyn. Have a great day. Bye.